Hi, everyone. I'm Alison Abreu-Garcia. I work at the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York City, and I'm here to present a case study about how we built our new staff site and how it's helped us improve internal workflows, but also how it's been a tool to communicate to other departments about the digital media department's capabilities, what we can do for them. And I wanted to give this talk partly because when I started doing research about a year ago, it was very hard to just Google intranets and see any results because it's by nature a closed system. It's often housing sensitive information. And so my goal really today is to hear back from you guys about what you're using. Excuse me. About a year ago, my department was in the process of establishing new workflows around how we managed and implemented digital projects. Our day-to-day involved a lot of emails back and forth, an endless amount of attachments. It looked a little bit like this. And we wanted to implement a new system where we had to fill out a form whenever someone was making a request that we'd receive regularly, updating a web page, adding an event, uploading a video or audio track to our website. And the logical place for that was our intranet, but the system we were using didn't support forms, and this seemed like the right moment to reevaluate what we're using. Our first step was to gather information, so we decided to do a survey about our existing site, how people were using it, why were most pages last updated in 2009, and it was a wiki, but was that helping us or hurting us? And some of the feedback we got was really valuable. First, we realized some staff didn't even know the site existed. They were not confident that what they were downloading was up to date. It was difficult to navigate and update, and they couldn't access the site remotely, which is important because we're spread across several offices. And so people are constantly traveling back and forth for meetings. They only visited about once a week for two key pieces of information, our exhibition schedule and our staff directory. Again, because we were split across multiple locations, we didn't always know what the other person looked like that we might have been emailing for months. And that people said forms, documents, and that staff information were really the most important to them, and social features were less important. We also identified similar needs across the institution. People needed a central place to download frequently requested documents, a ticketing system for departments for similar requests that they receive, a communication tool for staff-wide information events, and specifically for our move to the new location that we're moving to on opening May 1st. But also to see who works in what department and where. So I looked at a lot of tools out there. Some were very powerful, had a lot of bells and whistles, but none of them really fit our needs. What we needed was to build something simple without starting from scratch. We also wanted control over the language of different areas of the site. Why be forced to call something a space when what we really mean is a department? Why say ticket or issue when what we really mean is project or request? And so what we really needed was a simple, basic website, and we wanted to start small and iterate on that over time. So we ended up going with Drupal because it allowed us to easily create forms. It had a really flexible notification system. Staff could use their existing login, which was really important. We were able to use the same workflow we already used for incoming staff and terminations as well. We could also have complete control over the structure and the taxonomy of the site. We could call everything after our internal logic that we have. And it's also open source, well documented in a large developer community. So this is what I built. This is our homepage. It pulls in information from our timeline, latest news, some key links that people access frequently, upcoming holidays, and also more ephemeral information. Right now, it's the move that's our big thing. An institutional timeline was really important to us to communicate across all the different departments, what's happening, what are the key milestones in this move that we're making. Again, the nitty-gritty details of who's your move coordinator, how are you going to pack these stuff, and a news, like a blog where we are able to post information like press highlights, create this archive of information. A staff directory where you could easily look up people, filter by department, location. Forms that you could download. we worked really closely with departments like HR, legal, and accounting that have tons of documents that they're constantly emailing around that could really just live in a central location. We also wanted to make it really easy to add resources, and you can see the big button right next to the title. But one of the biggest parts of this site that we were excited about was our project center. This really allowed us to consolidate our workflows into one place. This is the graphic design department's project center. We started off with digital media and then opened it up to graphic design. They used to have one ticket for all these types of projects, but they really identified 9 key types of projects that they do, and they were able to create forms for each so they could get the exact information they needed up front instead of constantly saying, oh, can you send this other piece of information that I need for this project? Can you attach this or put this in that shared folder? And it also allowed people who submitted projects to keep track of all their requests and see the status, see who's managing it, and comment on that ticket. And then there's the fun part, which is the break room, where we can post our softball games and yoga classes and recommendations of where to grab lunch, especially around new locations. And one important thing that you'll see throughout all these slides is there's a little feedback tab on the upper right-hand corner on every single page, and if you click on that, it slides out and lets people really quickly and easily give us feedback. We see what page they're on when they send this form. And it's been really useful for people to just say, hey, I was expecting this form to be here and I didn't see it. Where is it? Or, it'd be great if we added this new feature to this section. We really wanted this to be a collaborative process and an iterative one as well. So we have this great site, but how are we going to get people to use it? With our old site, some people didn't know existed or they weren't interested in using it. So we had a few different strategies. One is that we talked to each and every single department in our museum and asked them about the content on the old site, what they wanted to move over to the new site, but also if they would assign one person as the point person who's in charge of their department's content. We also did training on how to add and edit content. We collaborated closely with people who had the most content, like HR and accounting and legal. And we also encourage people to send emails with links instead of attachments. All those all-staff emails that might have gone out with a document that isn't going to change over the course of the year. We ask them to include a link. So also, if you do update that information, it's in the same place. People know how to find it. But also, we led by example. We didn't ask other departments to create a project center of their own and insert their workflows into that. We did it for ourselves because we really knew what our workflows are and what we desired, and hoped that once people saw how our ticketing system was used, they might come to us to build their own. And since we launched it about a year ago, we've had 3 other departments come to us. Actually, another one came to us just yesterday saying, hey, this is a great system, and I really want to use this for my department to manage this particular request that I get every single day. And the stats really reflect that. 95% of our staff use it now. Each day, 30% of our staff is logged on. We've received 1,600 requests over the past year. Half of that is in the digital media department. And so we really get a sense of the volume. Like, none of us really thought about how many times we get a request for updating an event on the site. This really gives us the scope of that. And also the content is staying updated much more frequently. 65% of our pages have been touched over the past year. So our next steps, we put out another survey, and this time we got a much more higher volume of responses, which is great. And so we're going to be rethinking some of the structure of it, expanding privacy settings on pages and files. We started with just what is the information that the entire institution needs to know, and now we're kind of drilling down department by department. We want to bring search to the forefront, improve our notifications, and we recently built a similar system for our freelance educators. It was a great prototype for our docent program that we're going to build a site for as well soon. Using the same system. And that's it. Thank you.
there. My name's Emma Vernon. I'm from the Dallas Museum of Art. And I'm the manager of the DMA Partners program. This is Anthea Halsey. She's the senior marketing and social media manager, and Mandy Engelman, who's the director of creative services. Welcome. Welcome to Dallas. We're glad to have y'all here. We hope you're having a great time. We are going to chat with you a little bit about how we took a really siloed set of kind of email strategies and integrated them together across the museum to be a lot more effective.
Okay. So just to take it back to the beginning, about 2 years ago at this point in time, we were preparing to launch the DMA Friends and Partners program, as well as returning the museum to free general admission, which was obviously a huge shift in our strategy as an organization. And we foresaw that that was going to require us to really be concise with and strategic across all of our departments with the launch of Friends. So at this point 2 years ago, we actually were in a situation where email had kind of come up organically across departments. So we had multiple constant contact accounts. We had people using paperless post. I'm sure this is kind of familiar with some of your organizations as well. There was no one who really was responsible for overall email management. We had lists everywhere and anywhere. And we were very reactionary as opposed to strategic. So we would send emails when sales weren't going as well as we expected, rather than planning ahead for those sorts of things. So moving into 2013, we consolidated all of our email lists into one program, MailChimp. We launched the Friends and Partners program, which has been a great email acquisition tool for us. And also, we worked very hard to build up trust across our organization and across all of the departments who had been, up to this point, managing their own email communication. So finding lists was a big part of this project, and what we've become is basically like email investigators. And I'm sure you guys all remember yesterday when we asked people the same question 5 times at the keynote. And we have learned that we need to ask people 5 times if they have a list, because they will answer no, no, no. Oh, do you mean those 900 people that I send an email to every month from my personal email address? So what we found with these people was that a lot of them were just unaware that we were working to really pull this all together to make it a more concise and easy process for everyone. And also, we had people who were afraid to lose control of the contacts that they've been building over time and the content that they were able to send to them. So this just gives you an idea of kind of the scope of the email sources that we found. Some of these can even get a little bit more granular, like people signing up at special events, like including their email address on a list that they wrote by hand. So that just gives you an idea of that. So the way that we've also worked to handle this process is by building a team across departments, which you can see some of us here today. That allowed us to build trust within our organization, because everyone, for the most part, hopefully everyone at this point, believes that they have someone who's at the top of this process who speaks for them and understands. So we have someone from development, education, marketing, and creative services who are all work together as a team to work our calendar out, to work on content, make sure it's on brand, and that it's coordinated across weeks and days so that we're communicating efficiently with our list. And Emma's going to talk a little bit more specifically about how we manage the list now that we've put it all in one place.
So it's important, once you have your list, to think about it as an asset. Your list is really important, and you have to think about protecting it the same way you would protect your budget. If a colleague came to you and said, I need to use part of your department's budget to do something, you would make sure that you thought about it before you made the decision to do that. If an external organization came to you and said, we need to use your budget to do something, you'd be really skeptical and you'd think a lot about it before you shared that with them. So you want to be the same way with your email list. Because once you lose trust, it's really, really difficult to gain back. Once someone unsubscribes, it's so hard to get them back. Chances are you won't. And that's someone who chose and volunteered, said that they were interested in your organization. And the way to kind of keep their interest and make sure that you're not abusing that list is to make sure that your goal is to reach the right people, not the most people. So you want to build segments so that you get more people clicking on the things they want. I have two examples here, one of an older, very broad email that went to almost 60,000 people. You can see that we had a 0.39% click rate, which is only 220 people or so. Later on, we sent a much more targeted Arts and Letters Live, which is a type of lecture email to a group of people who we knew were interested in those types of things. It only went to a little bit more than 9,000 people, and we ended up having a lot more people who actually clicked. And you can also see the unsubscribe rate. We had 50 people unsubscribe from that bigger email, which isn't actually bad for an email that large, but on the other one we had 0. We didn't lose a single person. You really also want to make sure that you know your list. So your list is made up of people. It's not just a blob. And you want to think to yourself, what are your sources? What are all of your sources? How do they overlap? What does their source say about their interests? So did they purchase summer camp tickets? They have kids or grandkids. And then what data do you have in other places that you can incorporate? Are they in your donor database? Do you have their zip code? Different things like that. How did they opt in? Did they ask to receive really all of your emails, something really general, or are they asking only to receive specific emails about a certain type of program? And what have they told you about themselves? Do you have interests that they can select, that they have already selected in whatever system that you have currently? And then you want to use those different pieces of information to put together your segments. So you have your user selected interests. These are the interests that we have at the DMA. And this is semi-flexible. We add and edit sometimes, but very rarely. And you have things like exhibitions and collections, programs for families, shopping. And then you have your internal knowledge, so their ticket purchasers, their donor interest groups, their zip code. And you want to overlap those to make a good segment. So for example, if you were sending a summer camp email, you would maybe choose users who had picked the interest of family programs, previous summer camp ticket purchasers, and donors in your kids club interests. And you put all of that together, and those are people that you send emails about your family programs and things like that. So Mandy's going to talk about how once you've got that, you make your content fantastic.
So regarding the design and content, we thought we would give you a sort of a before and after example. And this is our late nights program, which Anthea told me I have to plug. It's tonight, if anyone's interested in going.
Free, open till midnight.
So on the left, you can see an email that we used to send, which was just the brand of late nights. It had a list of everything that you could do, sort of a bullet point list, and then we had like a little call out to an exhibition that was open. And our subject line was stay up late with the best bodies in Dallas, kind of relating to the exhibition that was open. So we had this kind of cheeky headline, and we had an okay open rate. We had an 18% open rate, but we had a really terrible click-through rate. We had a 0.56 click-through rate. And it's because we really didn't have a call to action, and we gave them all of the information in the email. So on the right, you can see our kind of new and improved version where we're including photography. We have a really big date. And we have a button with a call to action asking them to go see the schedule. And you can see we more than tripled our click-through rate to 1.8%. And then just a couple of other successful examples that we've had. On the left, you can see this is an exhibition email that we've tried where it was sent directly from a curator to their email address. So in their email, they would see that they got an email from Olivier Millet, our European curator. And then you open it and you see a letter from him about the exhibition, kind of telling you the personal story of how he came up with the idea. And you can see the open rate on this one was incredible. We were over 30%. And on the right we had an animated GIF, which I should have put on here, but I didn't. But it basically was a math problem that kind of solved itself for you as it went through the animation. And it was a targeted email to a very specific group of friends that had a specific number of visits, and they could click through to get a free ticket. And you can see our click-through rate on that one was 2.41%. And then one of the other things that we wanted to talk about was just empowering others and tolerating mistakes. With our email team, we have created a bunch of templates in MailChimp so that people can go and create their own email. They don't have to rely on my team to create it for them. They can go and create it themselves, but then we have a system of checks and balances. Like Anthea will check marketing messages, Emma will check the lists, I'll check the design, and then we'll hit send. And this is an example of one of those templated emails that Emma sent out where she had a clear call to action with a button. She had lots of click-through opportunities and short, succinct copy. And then, you know, there's always room for mistakes, and we've had our share of mistakes. One of my favorite mistakes that I've ever seen was Fab.com, which is an online retailer, sent an email on a Saturday, and the subject line was this PM tracking test, and it was just a picture of a cat. And not even probably 30 minutes later, this was their email back to you. And they said, meow, our goof is your gain, additional 10% off today only. And they had this really clever line about not littering your inbox. And then they gave you, this 10% off incentive to go to their website. So we now refer to our mistake emails as cat emails. So we have had an opportunity to use a cat email, I will say. We had a targeted email. It was supposed to be a targeted email for an Art and Bloom luncheon, and through some, lack of communication, it went to our entire master list. So it went to 150,000 people. And so the luncheon sold out in 2 minutes. Yeah, 30 seconds. And so we wanted to, own up to the mistake really quickly. We found some cats, with some flowers. And we gave them an incentive, we gave them a 20% off coupon to one of the exhibitions to kind of make up for it. So, and as Anthea always tells us, we're always one mistake or one click away from disaster. So it's good to know, it's good to own up to your mistakes, and it's good to just be honest with your email constituents. So by working across departments and being as thorough as possible, you could vastly improve the way that you communicate. And as often as we say, like herding a group of cats. So thank you. And by the way, I think we're going to get Alison to we're going to get you to create a request process for our emails. Yeah. We have that.
All right. So I'm Jennifer Foley from the Cleveland Museum of Art. And I wanted to think a little bit about visual ways to present information that you have. And so I think at this point, we all see lots and lots of sort of data sets that get visualized all over the internet, for sure. Like this one that tells you that you're probably going to die of poison or in a car accident. And, or both, or, you'll be poisoned in a car accident and apparently with cancer. So, there are lots and lots of data sets that are out there, and I think I personally feel kind of the deluge of these kind of infographics and data visualizations, and sometimes it's a little overwhelming, but the thing is that it's actually not new. This is a data visualization that is very, very old, that is a cartography of time. So this idea of taking information that may be transmitted in written form or an oral form and turning it into something that is visual is actually something that goes back a long, long, long way. And so, we have things like this. This is from 1860. This is a data visualization of the sort of mapping the slave population in Virginia by county. And I think it bears kind of a striking resemblance to looking at all of those voting maps that we see now every time there's an election. It actually looks very similar. It's just somebody did it by hand. They did not do it on a computer. And so, this idea of being able to do that has been around a long time. And it goes right up to now where, we have things that are everywhere, including, say, the New York Times talking about the economic recovery, in which you get this sort of world of squiggles that looks like somebody, let a toddler go at a piece of paper with colored pencils. Or you can use it to plot out various movies so that you know exactly how many times certain things happen in, say, Annie Hall or The Shining or Quantum of Solace, because I know that you've all been wondering that. Or if you're bored, various ways of filling up your time, such as what to watch on Netflix, or what should I read next, or how to start yoga, or those 12 annoying characteristics of horrible bosses, which to me means that somebody's filling up their time thinking about how horrible their boss is and then translating it into a visual graphic, because that's obviously what you should be doing with your time. And this I think is the most important one that I will show today, the grand taxonomy of rap names. So I think there is a sort of world of these visualizations of all sorts of information that is out there. One thing that I did want to say, just I think the words infographic and data visualization are sort of used interchangeably, and there's a lot of discussion about which one is what and what are the characteristics of each. In general, they are used pretty much interchangeably, and there isn't a whole lot of firm definitions of what is what. Generally, if it's an infographic, it's static. If it is a data visualization, it's actually supposed to be dynamic. So the one on the left, White Guy Dance Moves, is an infographic, a very important one, I'm sure you all know. And then the one on the right, I don't know if this is something that you've seen, it has baby names over time, and as you scroll up and down, it will sort of pull up names. That's actually a visualization. So I will actually not be doing any visualizations today, because I'm not going that deep. When I started thinking about this, what I was actually thinking about was not so much visualizing the data that we have to go externally, but how to use it internally when you're talking across departments or even within your own department. And so I thought I'd start with, I have this is an infographic for sure. This is one that I made actually using an online tool that, and sometimes it's about thinking maybe there are tools that we can use to talk with our visitors. And so this is one that I sort of made as a starting point for thinking about something that we might be able to make for visitors, going back to the very much open what to watch next on Netflix or what to read next. I see lots of these, and then I see them kind of passed around from friend to friend on Facebook or on Twitter or whatever. And so I thought, well, is this something that we could use with visitors rather than kind of about visitors? And so this was sort of using an online tool to be able to kind of direct people. We have lots of things that are if you have a half an hour, go see these things. But this is something that's sort of quick that you could do that would say, if you like this, go see this. To kind of help people make choices when they walk into a museum. I don't really know where I want to go. Help me figure it out. But I think when we have data, the way that we think about them, they kind of fall into certain groupings. And so one of them is actually categories. So this is, and I am continuing on with the older infographics that are out there. So this is actually an infographic of the origin of species by Darwin. So this is really about categories. And so this is one way of thinking about information that you have. Sometimes you have things that are time, like things happening over time, or how to think about how time is broken up. There's also space, right? What happens within certain spaces. And then there's frequencies. And so I'm actually going to talk mostly about frequencies, because I think that's often, no matter what department you're in, that's usually the piece of information that you have is quite often frequencies. And so this is the life of a typical American, which I thought was really interesting. It's the sort of frequencies of what you spend your time on over your lifetime. And, a lot of career and a lot of retirement, although I wonder if that is, I know that in my own personal life, the retirement's probably not going to be so big. I'm not sure that we're ever going to be able to retire. But so in thinking about how to talk with other groups of people within your institution, I know that one thing that we run into is that we often get into meetings and it's sort of I have these numbers and these numbers mean this. And so I want you to do the thing that I want you to do because look, I have numbers. And I work in an art museum, which means I work with a lot of visual people. I am a visual person, so I sit there and they say numbers and I'm like, huh? And it's not very convincing to me if what I get is this. And so there are really simple ways that you can do something very quick to change it from this to this. And that suddenly starts to feel like something that, okay, I understand what's going on here. And this is actually something that came out. This is docent-led public tours. And we were hearing, there was this sort of uptick at one point where we were hearing from docents that they were being overwhelmed by hordes and hordes and hordes of people on their tours. And so we were sort of like, really, what's going on? It's a few of them sort of said, we need to have more tours scheduled because I'm getting 75 people on a tour. And we're like, really? And so then I took the information that we had actually about how many people were showing up on tours and started with the thing on the left, which is sort of like, you look at it, you can kind of see it, and then turned it into the thing on the right. And when I had the discussion with the department about what was happening with the data, everyone went, oh, when they saw the graph, because suddenly it made sense. Like, okay, you're not getting hordes of people. You had a few tours where a lot of people showed up. And so that may not actually mean something has to be actioned on. Or if it does, then sort of the next step that we would do would be to say, the times when we have, 40 people on a tour is actually a lot of people. So if you have 40, 45 people, is that happening on a Friday? Is it happening on a Saturday? It doesn't mean we add a new slot every day of the week. Another thing that we often use actually are using kind of graphs like this where you just put the size of your text to represent frequency. And that this seems to work really well when having discussions. I've used it with a lot of cross-departmental discussions, and I am surprised at how well this works. And so it's something that's really simple. There's a lot of online tools that you can use, or you can just sort of do it yourself. And it really does work surprisingly well. There are actually a lot of things online, tools online that you can use to be able to talk about frequency that are either free or cheap and really, really easy to use. So this, and the next few things are really going to be about ArtLens, which is the app that we have at the museum, the Cleveland Museum of Art. And there are objects in ArtLens that you can open and look at videos, and then there are some where you have that and you are also able to scan them. And so I was interested in what was happening in terms of how often were people scanning something versus just opening the page. And so looked at the most opened and most scanned objects and dropped this in. And so the darker ones are the darker top part is showing opened, and then the bottom part is showing scanned. So it helped me personally to think about those two things in relation to each other and to have them laid out that way rather than where I started, which was just with the numbers. And you're like, well, this one and that one and this one. And it really kind of started to make sense to me. And so then when I was talking with members of my department, because we make the content for the app, we started looking at this and saying, oh, well, this is sort of interesting. Like, I see kind of this or that happening. So I'm back to docent tour attendance. This is another, using sort of bar graphs to do comparisons. Again, this is something that was super easy, online, and free, and I do have links at the very end of the tools that I use that are online tools. But just sort of comparing how many people are showing up for different types of tours. And this was really helpful for a discussion we have a coalition that oversees our docent program, and so it's a lot of having meetings with a lot of different people to talk about what's happening in that program. This is back to the app. This is, again, thinking about scanned versus opened. So this is another way of looking at that information. The other one kind of was giving you all of them in that graph, and then this is looking at single objects. And if you were to tap through the radio dots at the top, it would go to each of those and give you that pie chart for each one. So I think one thing is that if you're doing this internally and you are, in fact, not a designer and also not a person who works a lot with data, then there are things that are sort of cautions. And one of them is I found this. I was looking for data visualizations or infographics that were talking about art history specifically, since I work at an art museum. And I came up with this, and I was like, well, that's interesting. What the hell does it mean? And really, it's like there's a lot happening in this. And so I think one thing is that thinking about, like, what is the data that you have and what is the best way to convey that so that people aren't like, what? Because I had a real moment of what when I looked at this. And I still am not 100% sure what's going on here. And it's just like a lot of stuff. It's like lines and dots and pictures and lines and what? It does. It looks pretty. And it's funny that you should say that, because the next one that I have up there is this one, which I also found fascinating. It's actually a thing from, it was in the Scientific American, and it's about taste and like how, like what flavors are associated with what other things, so like there are things that have, and you'll see there's a thing at the top that says roast beef, right? And so then like there's other things that have sort of roast beef flavor in them, and this is all about like the chemistry behind flavor. And I'm like, well, that's really neat, but like I looked at it for a really long time before I could kind of figure it out. And again, it's this thing where it's like, that looks pretty, what the hell does it mean? And one of the comments at the bottom, this is one of the comments at the bottom that I thought was great. Hello, this visualization is very pretty, but almost completely unusable. I'm really interested in the data. Could you provide it to me in a more legible form? Thanks. So this is like somebody who's basically like, just give me the numbers because your pretty visualization makes no damn sense. So like it is one of those kind of cautions that as you're thinking about, like I have this set of data, what is actually the best way to show this? And often, simple is better. If you have too many different types of data in there, it's going to get like all kinds of crazy, and then nobody's going to know what you're talking about. And so, I mean, that's something that like having an infographic or having something that is a visual element of what you're presenting, the last thing you want is like, you're like, I have this great argument for why we should do this. And then everyone's like, I have no idea what you're trying to tell me because I'm too busy looking at your crazy visualization, and I'm no longer listening to what you're saying. So then it can be like a real fail. One other thing is that if you aren't somebody who works a lot with data, so I am an art historian, and I work in interpretation in an art museum, but I also did doctoral work in educational research and evaluation, so then I spent a bunch of time working with stats. And the thing is that like your assessment of what is happening with the data, if you don't do a lot of working with data, can go really, really horribly wrong. And so if you have someone in your institution, if you have data that is at all complicated, and even if you have simple data, if you have someone in your institution that does work with this stuff, it's great to check in with them and say, like, am I looking at this right? Is this actually saying what I think it's saying? Before you kind of move into the next phase. And so this was something that was on Slate, and they were talking, it's, you know, sort of a light thing. It's about, you know, the most distinctive recording artist by state. And the article, when you read through the article, they basically talk about like, well, it depends on how you look at the data. And if you look at it this way, you get these answers. If you look at it this other way, you get a totally different set of answers. So it comes down to whether or not New Hampshire is actually all about the Grateful Dead or fish, which that may be splitting hairs a bit. So I also wanted to go back to this is the slide that I showed before, and so you have this pie chart. So one thing about this is that it depends on what I want to say about this, right? Like I might show this if I wanted to use one of these as a very specific example to talk about what is happening between something being opened and something being scanned. But if I wanted to really look at this overall, this doesn't work because then you have to go through all the radio buttons. So then you might choose a different method if this is the exact same data set dropped into a different method. So then you're looking at what's happening in the total, or you might look at it by month. But that this is then giving that more overall view. So I think making choices about like what exactly is the story that you're trying to tell, what's the point that you're trying to make, and making sure that you're picking the right thing for it. And then this is just the three online things that I used. The first one with the histograms, so this was the very first one that I showed, the docents. That's actually just in Excel. So that one I thought I'd throw out there because we probably all have Excel. So I use this for the kind of flow chart of what you should go look at. And this pictochart.com, and the last one is Infogram. And those were used for the rest of the pie charts and the graphs and the bar graphs. And that's it.
Anyway, I'm gonna go without the comments. Hello, hiya. How are you doing today? Feeling good? Feeling relaxed? Are you comfortable to talk about branding? Because many of us, we are not. In fact, in the museum sector, when you talk about marketing and branding, there is some issues that comes along. We are not comfortable with it at all. In fact, some of us really hate the idea of branding take our friend Preston, for instance. It's not like we don't care about the shit, we really hate it. I mean, what is interesting for me is that that happens, and really we're not trying to do anything at all to engage professionals like Preston in this conversation about branding. And that's what I'm here for. In 2008, Robert Jones, who is from Wolf Hollings, a great branding consultancy, probably you know, he made this survey at the Communicating the Museum conference in 2008 about branding and museums. And he got great results, and this year I decided to retake the survey. Like 6 years later, to see whatever has changed since, if we have any advances, and whatever we can approach from this comparison between the results of 2008 and now. I make this online survey, and when I say worldwide here, it's not cool as it seems. We only have 220 entries. So yet, once again, we have some resistance with the idea of discussing branding. But I got some interesting results that I want to share with you. So here's a map of the participation, mostly museums from Europe. North America could have done better, I have to say. Shame on you. We have great engagement in Finland, in Auckland, in Thailand, and Israel. Anyway, let's come to the results. For my surprise, 84% of the museums that participated were public museums. I thought that would be different, and that's something funny for me. 31% are art museums, 26 history or heritage museums, and there's 27% who are the rebels that doesn't fit in any of those categories. And I think this is so great about our museum business. 60% of the museums are from the 20th century, and 26%, I guess, I can't see my notes, are from 2000 on. I asked them to describe the museum at the moment. 41% said, and this is the number that I want you to keep in mind, right? They said they have huge potential, but largely unknown. And that's the stuff that have to be have to have a great attention to it. Is your brand well-defined? Well, 54% said it is from a local or national or global perspective. Not well-defined, 27, and the museums that never done serious work on the brand, 16%. Well, I decided to merge them together so we have a clear view what we're talking about here. It's like almost a 50-50 situation, and that worries me a lot. Relating to the original survey, we have some, there's a good news here. From 63% to 45% in this survey. Among those 41% that I mentioned that has huge potential but largely unknown, 60% said we have a brand but it's not well defined, or we never done serious work on the brand, and that not happens by chance. There is a relationship between this number and the other one. How the people in museum feel about the word brand. Well, 48% said it's okay, 26% it's great, and 21% it's a dirty word. So we stuck to this idea that that branding and marketing is still a dirty word in museum. For my surprise, in this survey, 49% of museums, so we have more public museums saying that brand is okay than private museums. 22 to 22. So from comparing the two results, we were kind of stuck in the same situation or the same place. And there's an even distribution between public and private museums. What is the role of the brand in the museum? It guides everything. That's, I mean, from a branding perspective, that's where we want to reach. So only 25, guides the marketing work, 22, and it's about the look, 22. So, this idea that branding is about the look is something that we have to put behind us, for Christ's sake. Anyway, we have this question about what museums want. There were 16 options, and the participants could choose one of them, all of them, some of them, whatever. And this is the top-down list, and it's amazing how I got the same order that Robert Jones got in his survey in 2008. It is exactly the same order. And what we have here, museums want visitors to react and comment, and we want to become more active supporters. So the first choose, the first and second, is something that we expect them to do, not something that we are willing to do for them. So in third comes, we want to become a more resourceful, useful resource for people. And on fourth, expand the online activities. This is the bottom of the list, and what took my attention here is because yesterday we were discussing how many of the choices were selected by the participants, right? So we were.
Because it's multiple choice.
Yes, it is.
Multiple of them. So
It
it's
is.
not like a percentage of the total.
Yeah.
It is to sum up to one sample, so I'm not sure I understand. Sum up to one.
Yeah. You can choose one, two, all of them, doesn't matter. Well, I'm a journalist, I don't understand numbers, so. Anyway, moving along. Now there's this number that's interesting. We should take a look at it. From the original survey, 67% said they wanted to expand the online activities, and now we have 46%. And why is that? Because it's no longer an issue, or what? This is something new from in this survey that was not present in the original survey. I tried to map somehow how we are relating to digital media. And that's it. 37% said, oh, we are on Facebook, Twitter, no big deal, whatever. Only 34% said they have intense activity on digital media. 21 just thinking about digital strategy. When we got to the selection of the museums with well-defined brands, this somehow shifts. Not too much, but there's a little shift in it. That's interesting for us to understand what's going on. Oh, that's the fun part. The survey had 3 slots where you can choose any museum you want, the most admired museum brands. We are not talking here about what the best museums in the world are or the most visited museums. We're talking about this relationship with the brand itself. So we have 3 slots, and you can choose any museum you want. And so we are considering here the sum of all these 3 slots and which museum comes on first in each slot. Whatever comes to mind first. So any guesses? What could be the number one? Tate? MoMA. Who thinks it's MoMA, who thinks it's Tate? MoMA first. Tate? Ah, MoMA. And I have to tell you, this thing happens every time. There's the two museums that comes along on mind first, MoMA and Tate. MoMA on the survey comes first on the first choice, and also whenever people choose another museum on the first choice, it comes first on the second choice. And second one is, guess what? Tate. There's something about these two guys here, right? On both sides of the Atlantic. There's something about these brands that really relate to us. We should take a deeper look what's going on here. Third is the VNA. And on fourth, we have a tie between the Met and who? Who? Reichman. Ain't that great? That's what we're talking about here, right? This is a branding case that we should really give a lot of thinking about, right? How this museum was closed for 10 years, right? In this 1 year period, it comes from nothing to this place. There's an emotional feeling for us here in this room that we share with this guy, right? So my question for you is this. If we admire so much those brands, and as I told you, this happens every time, right? Each room, each one that I showed these results. If we admire those brands so much, how come we are so resistant to branding? That's an issue because we have to take a closer look at all those guys and really try to understand what's behind, what's underneath this. And we have so much to learn about this. And don't want to make a comment like this, but I don't believe it is about the crowds, and I don't believe it is about the buzz. I think there's something here that's it's below this, is much stronger, is much deeper, and we should take a look, because this is not something that belongs only to this club. I mean, this premium league. It's something that we can, like a Prometheus bring the fire, we can share among each and every little museum everywhere and try to build something from it. And that reminds me of Stephen Weil, that was talking about this like 15 years ago, when he was talking about the well-managed museum. If you got this definition that the well-managed museum is a clear defined mission and a set of shared long-term goals and underlying values. If you want to take this definition and apply it to a definition of branding, you can do it. It fits, it works. And I can see some evidence that we are more and more aware of this. This is from the UK Museum Association conference this year in Cardiff. See, we're talking here about a strong sense of purpose, clear organizational values, right? That's what we're talking about here. If you want to know what makes the Reich Museum, there you go. And this is from Communicating the Museum, this edition, and I love this idea of we have to be so aware that this implicit worthiness of our role just isn't enough. And it is so true, it's so beautiful, isn't it? And that also reminds me a philosopher, a Czech philosopher called Flusser, when he say, a shoemaker not only makes shoes. This is great, isn't it? Like, think about it. A museum not only have collection or make exhibitions, a museum also makes a museum out of itself, right? In each thing that they do, in each action, in each point of contact with society. So, thank you. Xixi. And we have time for questions. For me, only easy questions. Okay.
Sure. It's related to the visualization. I'm more on the formal side, so I look at numbers, etc. Let's say I collect a lot of data, I do data analytics, and now I want a formal method to decide how to visualize. It's not something that is subjective, highly subjective, or I don't need how to design. So what can you tell me?
I don't know that I can give you, I don't think there's like a formal method that I would say, other than simplicity works best. And so if you, I mean, I think the first thing is like, look at the data set that you have and figure out, is this something that can actually be visualized? Because some things are too big and complicated to do it. So, I mean, I think that, like, sometimes I have done them and then shown them. My husband is like my tester all the time, and every time I show him something where he's like, what the hell is that? I kill it. And that, like, so I would say come up with some people that are good testers that can say, like, I have no idea what that means. Or, you know, I don't know what you're trying to tell me. And I always pick somebody who's outside of the museum, because I don't want someone who's too close to the information, because they might have too much information to be able to read into it. Which is why I picked my husband, who does work at the museum, and he's always like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. So it's like really helpful to have that, but I don't have like a formal set of rules for like, if it's this, then do that, and if it's that, then do this.
If it says, okay, before.
Yes.
Yeah, not this.
This is for Luis. So Luis,
Yes.
in terms of branding, what if your museum is constantly mistaken for another museum?
Oh.
How come? Develop. Gotcha.
Well, first of all, historically, our museum sounded like another museum in our city, and so that became a problem. People always said, "Is this the X museum?" Now, our problem is that we share a building with another museum, and whenever somebody's in our museum and sees something wonderful, they say, "Oh, I'm at the other museum."
Mm. Right.
Did I get through that okay?
Well,
You have all the information you need. I'm not giving you more details.
right. The whole idea behind branding is that your brand occupies a single place in the world. Like you can put two bodies in the same space, right? Physics law. And that what happens in this brand environment when you clearly occupy a space, a mental space. If they're kind of mixing them together, they're both not doing their job right. I mean, of course, from a brand perspective, right? Because there's no possibility of this collision. If you have a well-defined brand, and of course I don't want to argue with the data. Of course, many of those museums who participated, who said they have a well-defined brand, no, they don't. But I don't argue with the data. I accept it. But that's the thing that we have to understand here, is that when you have this clear vision, this clear mission, the set of goals. Let me develop this. No, it is a long conversation.
It's a long conversation, and just to add, one of the solutions is not going to move into two different buildings. So, I just brought that up because it wasn't covered, and it's an interesting.
Have you considered a merge? about it. You know, what really we have to put ahead of us is what people want, what is value to them, not for us. So maybe they are already pointing something. Sorry? Yeah. So maybe they're already trying to tell you something. Talk to your visitors. Maybe a merge could be a good idea.
We have a professional person who yells at them.
Question for Luis.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering about this, like the most well-known brands. I thought, like, instinctively, as soon as most respected, or instinctively, I thought, okay, MoMA was the first one that came to mind. But it didn't really come to mind as like personally or something like that, as the most respected or most admired. It just came out to me as kind of like the most well-known brand, almost instinctively. Kind of like, okay, this one comes in, and then when I'm trying to think about the gradients, then I actually am starting to think more in depth about the organization, not an instinctive answer. It's like, what I'm wondering is, like, isn't this just to a certain degree the biggest megaphone?
How come? Yeah.
What I'm saying in this case is, it's not, it wasn't something, you know, I don't really think what it actually means to me. It's just like
What-
it's a logo plastered in.
Wasn't it your first reaction? MoMA came to mind, right?
Yeah.
This is what the essence of top of mind is about. It's what
Yes, it's just, I wouldn't,
what pops up.
I wouldn't craft it as most admired or anything like that. It's just, you know,
There's many forms to define admiration. There's something about MoMA that is already in your mind. So, as I said, it occupies a space.
yeah, I'm just wondering how, if you're looking at those names, you see essentially a lot of, you know, the brand is they're loud, bigger budget advertising. It's not just
It's not about money. It is not about money. Money helps. This game, of course, this game is not about money. It's about
But it is interesting to point out that the four top museums are very well off and well endowed and well supported. So there is a correlation.
cause or consequence. You see?
But is there also not a correlation between like thinking about those museums, those are also museums that have international standing as well, and have they're in places where they get a lot of international visitors.
Familiarity is going to.
Well, for instance, I thought you were questioning why the Louvre was not in that list.
Yeah, so why is Louvre not on this?
I can tell you. Or I have a hypothesis. Why Louvre is not in that list is because Louvre, it is a brand, of course, one of the most famous museum brands in the world. So we have acknowledgement of the Louvre brand.
Sure.
But somehow the experience of the Louvre became something else, becomes something more related to a tourist experience or whatever. For instance, it makes a lot of sense that the Louvre becomes a franchise, like the Guggenheim, that is not on the list also. So both Guggenheim and Louvre are not on the list, and they are both franchises. So they're kind of, it's a business model that becomes something else. But we keep a warm idea, a warm sentiment towards MoMA and towards state. You see? And that's what strikes this immediate response, that it's not rational. It is not rational. We just react to it.
I'm curious about the actual survey question, because I think that tells quite a lot. Is it about the most respected or the most recognized?
Admired.
Admired. Yeah, that's every museum should get a short four-letter name.
That's not a joke.
No, it's true, but I mean, I think we do run into problems, right? Like, for example, the short version of my museum's name, the short, we call it the CMA, right? Cleveland Museum of Art. Well, there's like 6 other museums whose initials are CMA. So I mean, I think we've run into a lot of this. So unless we're going to turn ourselves into something that has a different name, we're kind of stuck because we have the potential for sort of brand muddling.
Right. No, you're absolutely right.
And I think a lot of us are in that situation, right? Because many of us are the blank museum of blank.
But the thing, no, but just because it would be confusing, it doesn't invalidate.
No, it totally doesn't. It doesn't, but it does get to what you were saying earlier, right? About having issues with brand muddling.
Yeah, so.
Muddling, right.
Muddling. It's muddling.
Just say it.
Yes, it's a muddling.
But at the same time, we have to pay attention of those museums who are not on the list, but they are practicing the same essence of relationship building with their audience. Take, for instance, Brooklyn Museum and the Horniman Museum in the UK, right? They're local museums, very related. They're not so related to a tourist experience, but they're very related to a community experience. And they're both doing great.
Well, I think it is the SIG lunch has probably started, so I want to
Thank you.